Politico. He is based in Berlin, but he's joining me now from Paradise Valley, Arizona. Matthew, good to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So we're already hearing and seeing some of that backlash, at least from the UK and in France. I want to show you one tweet from Nigel Farage, and he tweeted this: terrible news from Berlin, but no surprise. Events like these will be the Merkel legacy. And far-right leader Marine Le Pen in France releasing this statement saying, how many massacres and deaths will be necessary for our governments to stop bringing in a considerable number of migrants into our communities without borders when we know that Islamist terrorists are among them? Well, right now we don't know if Islamist terrorists were behind this Christmas market attack in Berlin, Matthew, but what's the backlash been in Germany?
Well, even within Merkel's own party alliance right now, you have conservatives calling for a much tougher approach with the refugees. There's been a split within her party over the past year, which she recently resolved, and this has widened it again. So her challenge in the coming weeks is going to be to hold her own base together to fend off these attempts to try and get her to change course, which she succeeded for the most part in doing over the past year, because her argument has been all along, not everybody is a terrorist who comes to this country. Not every refugee is a terrorist. These people really need help, and we have a duty under our international obligations to continue to help them. But the more we see these kinds of incidents occur, the more difficult that argument is becoming for her and for her allies in the political landscape in Germany.
Do you think we're going to see her take an even harder line stance on immigration? I mean, in just the past few weeks, she publicly called for, public bans on full-face veils, and she's backed policies, when it comes to deportation of refugees who fail to qualify for asylum. How might she change her policies and stances on immigration as a result?
Well, I think a lot will depend on who is responsible for this attack. If they can prove that it was a refugee, that it wasn't just a terrorist who slipped into the country, but that it was somebody who applied for asylum under the refugee program over the past year or so, then it's going to be very difficult, I think, for her to resist these calls, especially considering that German elections are coming up next fall. And as you mentioned, she already has embraced this burqa ban, or some form of burqa ban. She's trying to reach out to conservatives in her party, and it comes at a very delicate time for her because she had mostly recovered the ground that she lost in terms of losing the confidence of German voters over the past year. If you remember the attacks in Cologne just almost a year ago to the day on New Year's Eve of 2015, where a lot of women in Cologne were assaulted in front of the cathedral there, and it turned out that a lot of refugees had been responsible for those attacks. And Merkel faced a massive backlash after that. Since then, she's taken a number of steps in terms of strengthening some of the rules on asylum and allowing refugees in, and the way that they are treated and have to integrate into German society by learning German, forcing them to show that they've made progress on that front. But it's going to be very difficult for her, I think, to continue to pursue this open door policy if this turns out to be the work of a refugee.
Yeah, and obviously I think she realizes that even in her comments. It sounded like she was dreading finding out if indeed this has to do with a refugee being behind this attack. That remains unclear at this time. But I think a lot of Germans also see this as an attack on their culture. I mean, Christmas markets, these Christkindl markets originated in Germany. There are hundreds or thousands of them all around the country in the weeks leading up to Christmas. And just anecdotally, Matthew, since you're based in Berlin, just talking to the people even before this attack happened, how do you think they're feeling about this attack and their security?
Well, I think a lot of people feel very violated by this. I spoke to some people in Berlin yesterday who said, well, it was just a matter of time before this was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. That said, this particular market in Berlin, which I know seemed to be particularly exposed because it was right next to this road, a road that where one could build up a lot of speed and plow into it, as happened yesterday. So I think there are also going to be questions that Merkel's government is going to have to answer about why there wasn't really any security at a lot of these markets. And the markets that I visited this year, I just left a few days ago, none of them had any recognizable police presence. So I think that there is a fine line that they have to walk between allowing sort of the freedom that Germans have come to expect and having security.
Yeah, clearly very, very challenging times right now for the German people and for the German authorities who are trying to do everything they can to keep their citizens safe. We appreciate your perspective, Matthew Karnitschnig. Thank you so much.